Good day. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm cool. No pun intended on the weather. It's raining. We need the rain. I'm out here in Los
Mhm.
Angeles, so I can only imagine what it's like over there on the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean it's a little chilly, but it's not too bad. So I'm just
Wow.
adjusting the lighting a little. There we go. Yeah, it's a little chilly, but it's not bad.
Yeah, I'm just like, man, it's so great to have you here. I really appreciate it. And I see I just became acquainted with the Real Q Lazarus account. Um,
Uh-huh. Yeah, with
that's
run by
I know that's
James.
family, right?
Yeah,
Family.
it's run by Q's son James.
Awesome. It's an honor to have you here too,
Mhm.
James. Thank you. Like I was like, whoa, I was blown away. I'm blown away by both of y'all,
Mhm.
like I'm excited to do this interview. And seriously, man, let me introduce you to the
Mhm.
audience before we get into it, because there's a lot of I'm just sorry. Whew. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. And let me know also if I say your name right. Is it
Mhm.
Eva Aregis Fuentes?
Yeah, Eva Aridjis Fuentes, yeah. Hmm.
Eva Aregis Fuentes, filmmaker, director, DJ, writer. Some of her films including Niños de la Calle, aka The Children of the Street, The Favor, El Chuy Hombre Lobo,
Uh-huh.
Chewy the Wolfman. That I hope my Spanish is awful. I'll try. That's
It's not
just some of
bad.
their. I'm sorry. She's been nominated for a Primo Ariel or the Ariel,
Hmm.
amazing awards. She also has had her works featured at Sundance and Cine Vegas, as well
Hmm.
as the Morella International Film Festival,
Hmm.
which your film Goodbye Horses won out of 14 films in the competition,
Hmm.
right? It's amazing, and I'm glad to hear that that's happened, because seriously, I'm tripping out. Even how
Hmm.
I found you, it was randomly, but man, it's so. I'm glad that you won, and I'm just more than thankful that you're on this cast. Seriously, like my platform is definitely something that I've covered Q on
Hmm.
my platform in 2020, and I was looking for her and I couldn't find her, and
Hmm.
just to see like where she was, and I had no idea about any of this. I still need to see your film. um just, I want to thank you personally for making the film,
Uh-huh.
as well as for coming on this platform, because man, you're answering a lot of questions that I had based off of the little that I knew about her. And I'm glad to have her son, James, on here as well, watching this. And I have to ask, is the film still on tour?
Well, it's pretty much wrapped up, sort of its theater screenings, certainly in the US. It did just screen in Madrid and in Spain and in Bordeaux, France this past week. So it's still having some screenings over in Europe, in theaters, but it actually won the audience award at the Bordeaux Music Doc Film Festival on Thursday as well. Um, and but in the US it's already on streamers. It premiered on Criterion Channel on November 1st, and it's also available to rent on or purchase through Amazon and Vimeo. Yeah.
Thank you, because I was gonna ask like if it's available. And I've been wanting to see it. I think I found out about it after you guys came to LA, like right
Hmm.
after, and I'm like, oh man, and that's when I think I
Oh, you
hit you
haven't seen
up.
it?
I haven't gotten I
Oh,
haven't gotten a
okay.
chance to see it yet. Ever
Okay.
since I found out, I just was like, I tripped out. That's when I hit you up. I'm like, wait, dude, you have a film about her? I gotta feature you on
Uh-huh.
this platform. Cause like, I mean, I only knew about like just the her through, of course, every most people probably know through the Silence of the Lamb movie. And
Hmm.
I did when I was doing I'm in the music history. I've been in the music history since I was a kid, especially rock and
Hmm.
roll. as you see
Mm-hmm.
my platform. I have another channel called Audio Venture as well. And for me, just, I knew about some of the new wave stuff, which I was into as a kid, but I'm like, okay, let me look up any other black artists that were included in new wave. And she came up and I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know that she did that song. Like I really didn't know the person that did the song until I actually was researching that. And then I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to find out more. And, you know, it was, I didn't write a lot, and I'm like, I wonder what happened. And I went, I tried to find her and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm reading, researching, for what you've done. I realized that I didn't realize that there was even subreddits asking the same question.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was like an unsolved mystery for a while. So I'm curious, like just what got you going on this?
Well, I used to, like many people, I first heard the song Goodbye Horses and Silence of the Lambs, and I really loved it. And I sort of tried to find more music by Q Lazarus, and there was none to be found. And I didn't really know who or what Q Lazarus was, if it was one person, if it was a band. Um, and, then um, also on the internet, I started reading about her, found out that she was an African American woman, that she'd been a taxi driver, that's how Jonathan Demme had met her, that he'd put her music in 4 of his films, including Philadelphia, where she actually has a cameo singing in a party scene, and and that she'd disappeared, and there was all this speculation as to what had happened to her, and well, I also, became aware. I used to DJ, so I'd always play Goodbye Horses. And, over the years, I saw the song kind of becoming more and more and more popular. Like when I first started spinning it, it was probably, 25 years ago. And people would always say, oh, what is this? Like I had it on the Married to the Mob record, the soundtrack, which was the only place you could find it at that time. And then over the years, like more and more bands started covering it. I mean, I think there's probably at least 50 covers of the song, which is crazy because for a song from the 80s, I can't think of any other song, maybe like Summertime or Hallelujah or songs like that have been covered that many times, but they're sort of older songs, and they're, like and yeah, and then the song started appearing in, Grand Theft Auto and Gucci commercials and Clerks and Family Guy and, video games and other movies. And so I think, as the popularity of the song grew, the speculation online as to what had happened to Q also started growing. And yeah, just like you and many others, I always wondered what had happened to her, and um, yeah, was very interested in her story, but I had no idea how interesting her story actually was, until I heard it all from her.
Man, it's one thing. I was listening to a few of the interviews that you've done with people, and you had mentioned that you were talking about her with a DJ friend of yours. How
Mhm.
long after that did you meet her? And I'll try. I always end up asking two-part questions, but I'm gonna cut myself off there, and then I'm gonna ask the other question. After that.
Well, it was with my friend Cyrus. We were out one night and they were playing Goodbye Horses, and we were talking a little bit about, what was known about her and the song. And he said, oh, you should do a documentary about her. And I said, well, I'd love to, but I mean, how do you find her? I mean, she vanished. And then I guess it was probably like 2 years later that I met her very much by chance. And, that day after I met her, the first person I called was my friend Cyrus. I was like, you'll never guess who I met today. Um, so yeah, I think it was a year or two after that. Um, so the
What
thought of
was your?
making a
Oh, I'm
documentary
sorry.
about her had sort of crossed my mind, but I never dreamt that it would actually happen, you know.
and I have to ask this because of what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in the car with her, how did you feel? Like what was going through your mind when you, and when did you realize it was her? Was it right away? Was it just like, okay, were you excited? Were you just kind of like, you gotta be kidding, like kind of like you gotta be kidding in your mind? Like what was going through your mind? That had to be a trippy thing, man, experience.
Well, I didn't know right away. You know, she was obviously in the front seat. She was driving. She was wearing sunglasses and a turban on her head, and you know, what I noticed when I got in the car right away was she was playing Neil Young's Harvest. You know, the whole record. She had a whole CD collection there, and I said, oh, like, you know, this this late woman, and you know, obviously knows and cares about music because she has her whole CD collection here, and you know, Neil Young's Harvest is a great record, and you know, usually if you get into an Uber or something, the driver's just listening to the radio. You know, they don't, you know, you don't get the impression like, oh, this is someone who really cares about music. So that was, you know, maybe the first clue. The second clue, and maybe the biggest one, was so earlier, this was in August 2019. So earlier in 2019, I'd read an article in Dazed and Confused magazine, you know, online, where someone said, oh, Q Lazzarus's real name is Diane Lucky, and there's a Diane Lucky listed as living in Staten Island. I'm going to go to that address and see if it's her. So this woman went to the address and like knocked on the door, and this white guy came out and said, you know, I don't know who that is. She doesn't live here. And the journalist said, oh, I guess I didn't find her. And that was sort of the end of the article, you know. It turns out it was her address, and you know, that was her husband Bob. But she didn't want to be found at that point, especially not by someone that was just knocking on her door, you know, which is quite intrusive.
Oh, man.
But I had read that article. So so when I got in her car, her GPS wasn't working, you know, which is very unusual also for a but it just happened to not be working. And you know, I don't know how well you live in California. I don't know how well you know New York City, but I live in Brooklyn, and Flatbush Avenue is like a very big avenue. It's kind of like the Broadway of Brooklyn, and it, you know, goes down to the bridge, to like the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge. So we got to Flatbush Avenue, and instead of making a left, I was going to Manhattan. Instead of going towards Manhattan, she made a right and started going further into Brooklyn. And I said, oh, we were supposed to make a left on Flatbush Avenue. And she said, oh, I don't know what that is, baby. You tell me, this is your town. And I said, well, where do you live? And she said, Staten Island. So that was another clue. You know, and then obviously she was the right age. I knew she'd been a taxi driver in the 80s, so it wasn't inconceivable that she'd gone back to driving, you know, to doing that for work. And, you know, we were singing, I think, Heart of Gold together. We were like chatting, you know, from the minute I got in the car about Neil Young, and we were singing Heart of Gold together. And, you know, maybe I recognized her voice. And then I said, you know, did you ever see Neil Young in concert? And she said, oh no, my concert days are long gone, which also seemed like something a music person would say. And then, so at this point I was like, could this be Q Lazzarus? So I just threw out, you know, I went from like, have you ever seen Neil Young in concert, to what about Q Lazzarus? Did you ever see her in concert? You know, I just
Wow.
wanted to see how she'd react. And she was kind of taken aback, and she said, I've heard of her. And she changed the subject. And then when we got to Manhattan and I was about to get out of the car, she turned and she said, nice to meet you, Ava. I'm Q. So that was the moment where I knew it was her. I mean, I started to suspect throughout the ride, but I didn't know for sure until she told me at the end. And yeah, she turned around and extended her hand, and like, and I said, oh, I thought it might be you. And she said, well, how did you know? And so I was starting to sort of tell her these clues, but like we were holding up traffic and all the cars were honking. And I said, you know, I'm a fan. Can I take you out to lunch or for some drinks or something? She said, let me think about it. Give me your number. So I put my number in her phone. She went on her way. I didn't think I'd hear from her, but I was just excited that I'd met her. I said, okay, New York still has some magic. And I actually went out dancing at like the old Pyramid Club that night, which sadly was like a COVID casualty, but she used to perform there in the 80s, and the DJ put on Goodbye Horses. And I
Wow.
went up to him and I said, oh, I met Q Lazarus today. He's like, no, you didn't. I don't believe you. I was like, I did. He's like, I don't believe you. I was like, okay. um, but and then she called me the next morning at 10 the next morning. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered, and she said, Ava, it's Q. Uh, I had a dream about you last night. She said, I dreamt I was performing and you were there, and I hadn't dreamt I was performing in many years. And she said, if there's something I learned from my dead mama, it's to not ignore signs from God. And she was very spiritual, very, grew up in in a Baptist family and singing in the church. And so we met for lunch at Mogador, which was sort of one of the only restaurants in the East Village that was still there from from the 80s when she'd been there. And we started talking. I told her I was a documentary filmmaker, and we decided to make the film. And then we started, a few weeks later, I got a small crew together. It was just me, a DP, and a sound recordist, which once COVID started, it was just me basically for the rest of it, but doing camera and sound and everything. But at that point, there were three of us, and we started filming. And first day of filming, I met James. Hi, James. Um, and yeah, we started filming at her house in Staten Island. That's where we started.
So cool, man. We got a comment from Scum Vita. One of the most beautiful, painful, heartwarming stories ever told. Such a strong human. In some ways, this is the most beautiful send-off a human could have. You can see her love and heart in her son. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So cool, man. So cool. And Tex Mosley, by the way, I had to wear this. This is Tex Mosley's band, Neverland Ranch Davidians. I got you, brother. That's Tex Mosley he's a legend within himself. You guys should add each other. And I mean, I interviewed him too.
Is there an archive where we can go back and watch the old or listen to the old podcasts?
Oh yeah, all of it's on my page, and also I have a
cool.
YouTube page too. And cool. Pretty much, you're gonna be on my page. Oh man, James says, "What's up, man? Thanks a whole lot for even showing up. This is rad. This is so cool." So I have to ask, like, it's a trip how just fate. I mean, is it fate or chance that all this stuff is happening, and just how everything just fit? Even thinking about things that I've read about her with Jonathan Demme. I don't know if Denny. I don't know if I said his name right. And her meeting him, doing the same thing, and just how everything came together with that, and just and then coming full circle, and just I know
they met the exact same way 32 years earlier.
That's so heavy, man.
Yeah.
I have to ask this one. Because what I put in my original mini bio on her was that she left the music business. That's the last thing that I had read. She left the music business and wasn't looking back. And I'm gonna hit both of you and James up, because I don't know if you saw my bio. Just to correct anything that's wrong, because I'm always trying to update. I have a lot of bios. I have a bunch of them that I haven't done either. But that's the last thing that I had read about her. Did she talk about any of that stuff? I'm gonna see the video, but I'm just curious.
I mean, it's all in the movie. It's her whole life story. It's more dramatic and complicated and layered than you could ever imagine. You know, I mean, she tells her whole story in great detail, and I mean, it was, you know, there were a lot of things at play, but the main one was that um, you know, she was just ahead of her time, and people didn't appreciate, you know, she didn't get the attention and the appreciation that she deserved. Um, you know, she couldn't get a record deal, you know, so she met Jonathan Demme, you know, when he was a passenger in her car, and he put her music in his next four films. And, you know, he took her to LA at one point and sort of introduced her to record companies, and no one would give her a record deal. And then she went to London and was there for like 7 years and had a, you know, a metal, a hard rock band. And she had a manager, and she couldn't get a record deal there either. So she was just getting, she was very, very discouraged. You know, she was so talented. She was doing all sorts of music. You know, well, first of all, she had an incredible voice, like so powerful, incredible voice. And then she had incredible range. You know, she was doing stuff from like, you know, sort of new wave, like Goodbye Horses type stuff, with Bill Garvey, and on her own in the 80s here in New York. Then she was doing rock and hard rock, and with her band in London. Then in the early 90s with the whole kind of like uh, you know, like Happy Mondays, and you know, the whole sort of Manchester stuff that was happening. They started doing, they did some songs that were more in that vein. And then with her best friend here in New York, Danny Z, she made amazing house tracks with
Mm.
him. So she had this whole range of styles, but none of it was, you know, was really gaining traction. And, you know, maybe part of it was that there was a lot of different styles. I don't know. You know, she was just trying everything. She was trying everything. She had so much talent, and nobody really, I mean, she says this in the film. She's like, the only one who would listen to me and give me a chance, and you know, was Jonathan Demme. Like, he was the only one that was supporting her, and he wasn't in the music industry. You know, he was a filmmaker, a filmmaker who cared a lot about music. You know, obviously he made Stop Making Sense, and um, you know, music was very important to him, and he always had great soundtracks for his films. But yeah, so she just, so that was a big part of it, was she just sort of gave up. You know, she realized it wasn't going to happen. And um and then there were a lot of things going on in her personal life, which, you know, she talks about a lot in the film. Um and she just kind of um yeah, I mean, she got caught up in the end of the crack epidemic, and lost her home. And you know, she just, it wasn't sort of a decision like from one day to the next, like, oh, I'm quitting, goodbye, you know. It was just all these other things were happening in her life, and she just, music wasn't, you know, she became very discouraged with what was happening, with the music industry not appreciating her. And then other things in her life took over, and to the point where she wasn't even really thinking about music anymore at that point. Um, and she really, it was very painful for her. And she went, you know, 25 years without listening to her music. She didn't
Wow.
tell anyone. You know, when she went back to, eventually, you know, had James and moved to Staten Island with James and James's dad, Bob, and went back to driving cars and buses and stuff. She wasn't really telling anybody that she'd been a singer. You know, she didn't tell any of the other bus drivers. There's a funny scene in the film where she says that, you know, they were all having the bus drivers she worked with, they're all having a party or some reunion one day. And they came in, they said, you know, are you a singer? She said, no. And the guy said, well, we just saw this film called Philadelphia. and there's a woman singing in this party scene and she looks just like you.
Wow.
And she was like, oh, I don't know, like everyone has a double, it wasn't me. And it was her, but she didn't want to be found. She didn't want to be, I think she didn't really want to talk about with, the people in her new life. She didn't want to talk about her old life, and, because it was just very painful. And and yeah, it wasn't until we met and we started making the film that she decided that she was going to go back to her music. And some of it was that James, her son, was in college, and she was like, okay, like he's going to be on his own soon. I can sort of maybe I've raised him. I can focus on myself again. And then, she also took sort of meeting me and the fact that I recognized her maybe as a sign. And a big part of it too was, she wasn't on social media. She wasn't really, well, it wasn't until we started making the film that her and her son James sat down and really started looking on the internet and being like, oh wait, all these people are covering the song, and all these people are there's all this speculation as to what happened to you. And, sort of really realizing that in the 25 years that she disappeared, the appreciation for Goodbye Horses and, interest in her as an artist and a person had really exploded. So she went from feeling, in 1995 when she sort of went off the grid and she felt like no one cares about what I'm doing. Even Goodbye Horses back in 95, no one really, it was in Silence of the Lambs, but it didn't really get its sort of like cult status until the past, 10, 15 years, I think. So I think she realized, like, okay, if I go back to my music now, it'll probably be different. Like people are listening now. People are interested in what I'm doing. So that was the plan, but unfortunately life isn't fair and doesn't really give us what we want when we want it. So
Man, yeah, that's a heavy thing, man. Heavy stuff. And I'll say this, with this platform, especially in my friend Sam's platform, Culture Rock, Rock the Diaspora,
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of us, especially a lot of us Black musicians. I'm a musician as well, and an artist. We really have been trying to take the reins of just like celebrating, people like Q, because I feel like a lot of what's been done, especially, it's personal, and even with some of the things that you're saying, when it came to the record industry, I noticed even some of the interviews and things that I found out later, that they use the same term against her that they've used with other Black rock artists. She's unmarketable. Oh, yeah. Some people will probably use excuse maybe because of how diverse she was. But I'll be honest, just personally, I don't think it was a diverse thing. They did the same thing with Lenny Kravitz too, and a bunch of other people. And plus, just her being a woman, I think it's even harder. And just, it is, I'll be honest, a lot of racism plays into that stuff. When they couldn't segregate the dance floor, they did it in the industry. They started that back in the late 60s. They couldn't do it to Jimmy because, bam, hit everyone in the face. But there were other artists back then, that were doing things. And I always focus on the era, even though I do the stuff before, going even back to the 20s and 30s and 40s with rock and roll and Black history of rock and roll. But I really focus on the era between the late 60s to the 90s and maybe early 2000s, because I feel there's a lot of things where they did that they couldn't do on the dance floor. And unfortunately, I think, that hit Q Lazzarus. And it's messed up that, other artists are given the reins to be diverse, Prime example, David Bowie, Madonna, they've done all kinds of different stuff, but when it comes to a Black artist, it's like, oh, you can't market that, even though we have, I mean, her stuff, the little that I've heard, her voice stands alone as it, not to take away from the other musicians, such a unique voice. and just I dig the little that I've heard, you know,
Sorry.
which is Goodbye Horses and that Talking Heads cover. It's really cool stuff. But, oh, also, Jared World Eater had a comment. He's all effing Staten Island people. Shake my head. Oh man. Ah,
Sorry. I just
it's
wanted to
cool.
text the person that was just calling me saying I was doing a podcast. Um, yeah, well, there's a lot of talk about it in the film, you know, that so Q, even though Goodbye Horses is the song that everyone, you know, knows her for, her favorite music that she made was the rock stuff that she did with her band in London. And she was going more in the sort of rock direction here in New York, and um and she just felt like nobody wanted to hear like a black woman doing rock and roll. They wanted, you know, she was expected to be doing like R&B or, you know, sort of, it was the 80s. It was a very like materialistic, superficial time, you
Hmm.
know, and um you know, she was working in genres which at the time were considered more white, you know, like new wave or heavy metal, you know, and she kept being told, you know, like she kept being told like no, like you can't do rock, you know, and her rock music was being rejected, and you know, and it was ridiculous because you know, as we were just saying, you were just saying, like, you know, African Americans invented rock and roll,
Yep.
you know, and then for an African American woman, you know, 50 years later, 40 years later, to be, you know, be told that she shouldn't be doing rock and roll because it's not, you know, like her genre, and that she should be doing something else, you know, it's just, it's infuriating. And she came up against this here in New York, and she came up, you know, in the US, and she came up against it in the UK as well. Um, so it was, yeah, it was because she wasn't doing rock. It's because she was doing rock and sort of going that direction. Um, and yeah, so they were saying like, we don't know how to market you, and you know, um, so there was that, and then yeah, and I mean the in the film, you know, Q sort of tells her life story, and there were many things. The film isn't explicitly about race, you know, but her race comes into play time and time again, you know, from how the music industry treated her to how the legal system treated her to ultimately how the medical system treated her,
God.
you know. So it's, yeah, I mean, there's you know, I've no doubt that if Q were a white man, her story would have been completely different, you know. Um, but yeah, but her rock music is great. You know, it's all out on Sacred Bones Records. Put the soundtrack out. So all the songs that we hear in the film, I think there's like 22 of them are available
Wow.
on vinyl, on CD, you know, digital, and you know, one day when we were filming, she gave me like this. She all her music had been in storage in a storage space. Like she had not listened to it, and she gave me this huge bag of tapes, and she said, "Here's all the music I've made." So I
Wow.
digitized it, and we spent like 2 days um, just listening to it all, and it was almost like we're sort of archiving. You know, she was saying,
Mm.
"Okay, this is what this song is called. This is who I wrote it with. This is where I wrote it. You know, this is what it's about." And and she was kind of listening to her music for the first time in 25 years, and she was sort of laughing or crying or singing along, and you know, she was getting so emotional, and
Wow.
I could see her. It was sort of the moment where she realized, you know, how talented she was, you know, because she had just like buried all, you know, she'd buried her past, she'd buried her music, and she was listening to it all again and sort of all at once, and just, you know, I could see her realizing like, wait a minute, I'm fucking talented, you know, I'm really talented. And um And I think that was a big moment also when she was like, I'm going to go back to this. Like maybe now is the time that it's meant to happen, you know? So,
She would have had an audience for sure. I mean,
yeah.
especially with all the stuff that, like, not just me, and I don't want to just sing out but there's a lot of platforms like mine's, and they've been plugging her too. You know, I mean, I kind of did my own research, but it's so cool to see other cats that were on the same page, you know, like,
Hmm.
oh, cool, they're covering her too. Like that, you know, as far as like a lot of us, I don't like to use the term content creator, but I guess that's what we are, content creators that have been taking, having our platform for, you know, Black history of rock and roll type stuff.
Hmm.
And I seriously believe that she definitely, in this film, you know, that's why I wanted to bring you on here. I want people to know about this film. I want to
Yeah.
promote your film, and I
Hmm.
want people to just know about her and just, you know, her work as well as
Yeah.
what you're doing, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. Scum Vita said music she allowed you to use for, I think this is a question. The music she allowed you to do for the film is phenomenal. So insanely gifted. I was watching to the end credits, and I saw that she is the one who released it to be used. Is mind blowing. We have another guy,
Hmm.
ASYD Butterfly. I just joined. Who is she talking about? We're talking about Q Lazarus. Glad that you've joined, and you got to know more about Q Lazarus if you don't. And Eva, or Ava. I'm so sorry if I
Ava,
said your
yeah, yeah.
name wrong.
Don't worry about it.
Ava did this beautiful film about her that you have to check out called The Many Lives of Q Lazarus. You got to check her out. This is very important. Did I get the title right?
Yeah, yeah. Goodbye
Okay,
Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazarus. Yeah.
that's the title. Sorry, I got it wrong. It was, Scumvita also said it was powerful how you highlighted the systematic racism in the music industry and hospital care as well. I lost my father to similar circumstance. Lord have mercy. Jared says, or World Eater NYC, he's out there where you are. He's a producer
Hmm.
himself. He's awesome. Jared Hassan. I had him on here too. And he says this. He's the one that said effing Staten Island and shaking his
Yeah.
head earlier. Um, seeing if there's any more comments. Thank you guys for all coming out. This is really cool. Now we know about Bertha May. Oh, wait. Now we know about Bertha May Lighting. Who is that? I don't know who that is. Do you know who that is? I don't know who Bertha May
No,
Lighting is.
no.
Um, so you mentioned Ancient Bones.
Sacred
How,
Bones.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, my bad.
No
Oh,
worries.
Sacred Bones. That's such a cool name
Mhm.
for a label. How did
Yeah.
that come about? And also, so this is everything from different recordings
Hmm.
over her span of when she was active in that.
Yeah, it's all it's sort of her first album, and it's also a compilation, you know, an anthology of all the music she, you know, the I mean, there's more music that hasn't been released that
Wow.
her son James will probably release eventually. But this was sort of the songs that I used in the film. And the way I chose them was a sort of a mixture of the ones I liked best, and but obviously more, even more than that, the ones that went, you know, with her story, that were sort of illustrating her biography, you know, and along, you know, while she was telling her life story, and also obviously talking of some certain songs where she was talking about making those particular songs as well. Um, but so Sacred Bones Records, you know, they're New York based, and sorry, I don't know who's ringing my doorbell.
Uh-oh. If you
Uh,
want, you could answer it. I'll just talk to the audience if you need to answer that, you
okay,
know.
I'm sorry because I just
No, it's
want this to
cool.
stop.
Thank you guys for coming out for this. This is really beautiful. Celebrating Q Lazarus, man. I mean, I'm glad to have Ava and James. You know, hopefully we can get you, if you're interested, James, to do even a live interview. This is really cool. I really appreciate you guys for coming out. This is really cool, man.
Hi, sorry.
Um,
Um, yeah, so Sacred Bones Records, they're I know Caleb, who owns the label and founded the label. He's a friend, and um, I knew that he would, be very respectful and appreciative, with Q's catalog and with her family and estate, and a big theme in the film is also how she never got any royalties or rights for Goodbye Horses, and
man,
to this day,
wow.
still is not. It's still an ongoing battle. Um, so, um, so I knew that, that it was very important to me that, that the record be put out by somebody that I knew was going to be honest and do right by her and her family and estate. But also Sacred Bones Records, they have a huge range. They do everything from sort of goth and metal, rock, new wave, and then they've also done a lot of soundtracks and music by, music related to films. They put out like Jim Jarmusch music and John Carpenter and,
Wow.
David Lynch. And then they also have a lot of artists who've passed away, Genesis Peerage. And so it just seems sort of like the perfect label for this record because they do soundtracks, they do different genres, and I knew that they would treat it well, treat
That's
her music and her legacy well.
that's so cool, man. And man, even mentioning the artist that you mentioned, I'm like, that's rad, man. That's a very diverse like label. I'm gonna check them out, man. Like that's so
Yeah.
cool. Hypo Juno says Q invented the Afropunk New York scene. Awesome. Man, I had a question, and I don't know if this could be answered. It's a trip. Even when she was active, we had the Black Rock Coalition, and it just makes me wonder how, like, their whole mission. I don't know if she knew about them at that time. Their whole mission was to basically fight against all the stuff that she was going through, because a lot of brothers and sisters playing rock and roll at that time weren't really allowed to
Hmm.
do. I mean, to even be at certain venues, it's just crazy, man. And
Yeah.
just thinking about how maybe it was regional, but at the same time, how still people were facing that. And this is the
Yeah.
80s. I mean, me and you, I think, were born in the same year. So I mean, I got in the new wave, heavy metal, hip hop,
Hmm.
hardcore, all that. I'm still in goth,
Hmm.
all that. I'm still in all
Yeah.
this. So it's
Once
just,
a goth, always a goth. That's what
heck
I say.
yeah. Release the Bats. Shouts to Jen and Dave Bats. Those are the homies. Um, like, yeah, I've been into all that stuff, but it's always a trip just to see like what other artists have been through, even
Yeah.
when it comes to the industry and stuff like that, even trying to do their own thing, no matter what kind of rock and roll or alternative music they were doing,
Hmm.
and just the opposition is just unnecessary. The fans
Yeah.
know what they want. I mean, as you know, mostly underground scenes, goth and punk scenes, even with bands like, Bad Brains, or, like, groups like, Ritual, like I interviewed Raymondo from Ritual.
Hmm.
I mean, cats are going to be into the music that they're into, no
Yeah.
matter who's making the music.
Yeah.
But the industry thinks that they know everything. I remember one of the interviews that I was watching based on your movie. One guy said in the set in no, actually, no, it wasn't that. It was Frank Zappa. I'm going to quote him.
Uh-huh.
Frank Zappa said something. I love Frank Zappa. He said back then, when he was coming up, there was these old guys that they knew that they were out of touch, so they just, the industry allowed anyone to do whatever, and stuff like he did probably wouldn't get away with, but
Yeah.
today, and he was addressing even, I think, even the racism, you know, within that,
Hmm.
within what's going on even now. All the hip dudes are deciding today what they think needs to be marketed, but they're still out of touch, and I see like I don't understand how anyone could pass up such a talent as Q Lazarus, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not at all, regardless of race, you know. It's crazy.
No, it was crazy. I mean, she was definitely ahead of her time, you know? And yeah, I mean, like also the house music she was making with her friend Danny Z, like in the 80s,
Wow.
was also, you know, yeah, she was very ahead of her time. I mean, I think if she were young now, you know, especially with the internet, which for all of the negative, you know, aspects that exist to the internet, you know, what it does have, you know, the best thing about the internet is that it gives access and a platform to everybody, you know? So,
Yep.
you know, if she were young today and she were making that music and the record, you know, the music industry wasn't paying attention to her, like the kids would be paying attention to her,
Yep.
and things would, you know, and then the music industry would start paying attention, you know?
And
Um,
that's why your movie is so important because,
yeah.
like, seriously, like, like I said, I'm not the only platform. The fact that you release this, especially, you know, in this time, it's going to be celebrated. And hopefully, you know, both you and her family will get the fruits of that as well because cats need to know about like artists that like her, you know, they need to be celebrated.
Yeah.
Hypo Juno said Paul Ngozi and his family invented doom rock. I could see that. I mean, that's a whole. Oh man, I gotta. I like the Ngozi family, the whole Zamrock thing. I like a lot of that psychedelic stuff too. Um, but I think it's really
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, it's just really tragic that, you know, she finally had a record out and she's finally getting the appreciation and the, you know, respect and love that she always deserved. And, you know, as we say in Mexico, she's finally getting her flowers. You know, they're finally giving her her flowers. And, but it, you know, but it's posthumous. She's not here. I mean, I do think she's aware of it. I do think she feels the love and, you know, from wherever she is. But it's just, you know, really, really sad that she's not here to enjoy it, you know, and experience it sort of,
Yeah,
um, because, you know, she really was a superstar. Like everybody who I've met who knew her, you know, they all said that, you know, she was just larger than life. She was one of these people that would walk into the room and everybody would just watch her and listen to her and, you know, like just very magnetic personality and person. And, you know, she was 6 feet tall. She had amazing style. She had great sense of humor. You know, she's a great storyteller. And one of the things that really stayed with me from the 3 years that I was making the film with her and we became very good friends, was, you know, she went through all this really heavy stuff and she wasn't jaded or bitter at all. You know, she never lost her her open-heartedness. You know, she was very generous. She was, as I said, like, you know, in the film she talks about, even when she's talking about some of the most difficult moments of her life, she'll crack a joke, you know, like she'll find some way to add some humor to it. You know, she was just incredible. And um and yeah, so the film is, you know, it's not just the story of an artist, but it's the story of an incredible human being and, you know, an extremely strong woman and survivor and mother. And um yeah, there's a lot of things that the film is about. You know, it's sort of, it started off being about Hugh Lazarus and sort of, you know, Goodbye Horses and the 10 years that she was making music, which was 85 to 95. And it wound up being about life, you know,
mm.
about so many different things in life, you know, hope and dreams and addiction and heartbreak and motherhood and family and, you know, creativity and being a woman and race. And it wound up being about a lot of things. And yeah, I just feel very blessed that I met her and she entrusted me with her story. and that um, even if it's through the film, that people now, people all over the world going forward can hear her story from her in her own words, and hear her music. That's all she ever wanted, was to be heard and seen, you know. Yes, that's true, babe.
She's like, yeah, I agree with you. Well, I want to thank you for seriously taking time out. Oh, somebody else put a comment. Oh, Scumvita said her voice was still powerful, and she hadn't actively performed in 25 years, which is, man, that's so cool. And
Yeah. No. I mean, the
after,
film,
I'm sorry.
she was going to go back to her music, and the film was supposed to end with a concert. I had sort of tracked down all her own musicians from London, and her, collaborator from New York, Danny Z. And we were just we've been filming for 4 or 5 months when the pandemic started, and then everything just got derailed, as it did for everybody. And then some medical stuff started happening, and it just never it didn't happen. The film, and much more importantly, her life didn't have the ending it was supposed to have, where it was supposed to be this happy ending, where she finally returns to the stage, and and people are listening and watching, and she can go back to her dream, which was making music, but but even though the film is very sad, and ends with her passing away, I do think it is also like an uplifting film in a way, in a different way, because because that's the way she was. you know she took heavy things and turned them into something positive and hopeful, and we learn, I think, that lesson from her, and in the film, through watching the film. So I think her legacy is not just musical. It's bigger, it's larger than that. It's almost philosophical. you know
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
attitude towards life, that we can learn from her as well.
That's a heavy thing, man. I was gonna even ask, and you kind of answered it, but I'm still gonna ask this question.
Yeah.
Jared says, "I'm sure she wanted to be paid too." Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
most deaf. Um,
Yeah. I mean, she never, and the Goodbye Horses, her family still isn't getting the royalties from that. So
that's not cool.
no. So it's an ongoing struggle, with that
Hopefully,
song.
this will
But
help.
the best way to support her family and the estate and her, her memory and legacy, is to get, the music that she does, her other music, which the estate does get royalties for, and which she was most proud of, was the other stuff.
Let us know
I
how we
think,
can
like,
plug it.
every band or singer that has like one song that's really popular, they're like, okay, but can you just listen to the other stuff as well?
Yeah,
It's like, just
yeah.
um
Let us
yeah.
know. We'll plug it. Like that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Especially, and I'll even tell my comrades. you know, one thing I was gonna ask, and I hope this isn't too heavy, even
Hmm.
though like it's been pretty heavy now. Even me talking about this, I'm like, wow, this is a trip. Making the film, um, how was it when like after? How was it? I'm sorry. How was it seeing it for the first time in its entirety after? Because it took years to make it, but like seeing everything in its entirety. How how was it like? Just experiencing that from the view of just okay, like being a viewer of what you did, like how was that? How did that experience? How was the experience of that? Was it pretty heavy or just, you
I mean,
know?
it's very hard to have objectivity when you spend, 5 years working on something and you know it so well and you've seen it so many times and um but I mean, it has been wonderful sharing it with audiences, particularly in like a theater setting, even if it's not like the most cinematic film. It's a very low budget documentary that half of it I shot and sound recorded myself, like because it was just during the pandemic and there was no money, but at least it also gave it an intimacy because it was just me and Q for a lot of it. But so it's not the most cinematic film from a visual standpoint, but um, but seeing it with an audience, I still think it's been really great seeing it with an audience because people laugh and they cry, and like Hugh's story is so powerful, and she's such a strong presence on the screen, and I think movies are made to be seen in that setting on a big screen with an audience. It's meant to be a sort of collective experience, and um so it's been great, just seeing people fall in love with Q, and just seeing that her story really resonates and that they're getting it, and they're understanding it and what she was about. And so as the filmmaker, like I was like, okay, well, I did my job, which was to help her get her story and music out there, and I think show the many, that's why it's called The Many Lives of Q Lazzarus, because she led very colorful life with many chapters, many of which didn't even make it into the film because it was just too much. But what was important to me was showing she was much more than Q Lazzarus. It's a film about Diane Lucky,
Mm.
about the woman Diane Lucky, and Q Lazzarus was one of those, one part of her life. So what was important to me really was showing all these different chapters that she had in her life and all these different sides to her personality, from her sense of humor to her storytelling to her relationship with her family, the one she was born into, her chosen, the one she had with James and Bob, and yeah, just just showing the many sides of her, to sharing that with audiences, and making sure that I put as much of it in the film as I could. Um, I feel like particularly once she passed away, the responsibility became much larger, 'cause she wasn't going to be doing more interviews and she wasn't going to be making more music. And it was like a lot of her legacy was now going to depend on this film and what I included in it and what I didn't, and how I, portrayed her. So it became a very big responsibility of, being sort of almost like the keeper of this person's story, you know, um, or the vehicle, the being the scribe, if you go back, if you think back on, um, the old civilizations and old, where you had, the scribes who were, everything was the oral tradition, stories were told orally and most people didn't know how to write. And then there was the scribe that had to, write it all down, and that's how it would get to other people that weren't there when the story was being told, and that was sort of my job on this film, was sort of yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And I'm definitely gonna go check that out. I'll have to get the streaming version of it. Hypo says YouTube can help sometimes, but before internet era, we had just goodbye horses. Thanks to Eva, I'm sorry, thanks to Eva's work and the Q's family to give the chance to listen finally to an entire album of her and her band. That's awesome. Jared, ooh, what's this thing doing? Oh, sorry about that. Jared, Jared says, or World Eater, New York City, that's Jared Hassan, says, has there been any discussion around producing a live show to feature her songs and provide support for her family, particularly here in New York City?
We just did that on October 15th, actually. We had a show at TBI, which was sort of a tribute and benefit show with 14 bands playing, including Danny Z and Gloriana Galicia, who were two of her original collaborators. And with members of Interpol and Block Party and
Wow.
lots of people who really loved her music and the film, and they donated their talent and their time. Genres Death, Art Grey Noise Quintet, like Dagmar Zuniga, Tierra del Fuego, and yeah. So, but luckily, I filmed the concert, and so as soon as I have the time, I'm gonna edit it because I filmed it with 3 cameras. So it'll be out. The people will be able to see this benefit and tribute show that there were 14 different bands all doing Q Lazzarus covers of
That's
10
rad.
different songs, and it was amazing. Everyone, and James came from Brazil, and it was incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, James said,
everybody did a
oh, sorry.
fantastic job.
Yeah, James was just answering that too. He says we had one about a month ago in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
That's so cool. That is rad, man.
A
Yeah, I
month
would
ago
love to see
today,
that.
actually. Yeah, a month ago today, October 15th.
That's a trip, man. Wow. And it's so cool that how much her music is loved. I mean, freaking Chino Marino from Deftones with his band Crosses and MGMT, they covered it. I mean, she's been covered by so many people.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the video game thing until like recently, to be honest, because I don't play video games. But that just shows you just how much of an impact she's had, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, long as I'm sure, you know, many people are gonna see that, you know, and hopefully she even realized that, you know, even before, you know, what happened, you know.
Yeah.
Jared says it would have been interesting to have had BRC members, including Vernon, the Veld, and others involved in an event like that. I'm sorry I missed that. I hope there's another. Jared's involved in a lot of stuff like that himself, and you guys need to talk. He's amazing, man. Her work deserves.
Honey Coleman involved as well. She also sang. She did a cover of "I See Your Eyes." You know.
Wow.
She's
so
in the
cool.
Afro-punk documentary, and yeah.
Man, yeah.
We'll do a film of the. I mean, yeah. Maybe we'll do another one in LA or something one day.
That'd be rad. Yeah, Honeychild Coleman is awesome. We had her on here too. And I missed her when she came out here. We were trying to meet up, but it was hard, you know. But yeah, that's the homie, man. But I would have loved to see that. Well, Jared said, what was that? Her work deserves consistent support from multiple scenes. Yes. I Hero says Afropunk is amazing. Jared says, or a World Eater, New York City, aka Jared said, I performed with Honeychild myself a few weeks ago with Reconstruction. Those guys are all cool. Jared, Honeychild, Reconstruction, shouts to all those cats. Funny, I've never met them all in person, but we've been talking online for years. So yeah, and I've interviewed a few of these cats. So you guys should all network, and y'all are all on the East Coast. East Coast, West Coast love. No. But man, so Eva, I want to thank you for not only making this film, I mean, we're all overjoyed, but also for coming on this platform. I really appreciate.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
Man, 2 things that I usually do before, you know, we get our roll on. I always say get my roll on like deodorant. All these kids that I teach are what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I forgot. They don't know about that. That's a horrible joke. It's silly. Um, Two things. Advice that you would give everybody. Oh, Hypo says something else. I recently saw a photo of Q while playing guitar in a live performance. It would be interesting to know the live aspect of her work and how really inspired it really inspired the 90s alternative rock scene. I think you can answer that one better than me, obviously.
I mean, she played guitar, she played piano and keyboards. You know, obviously her collaborators, Danny Z and the band in London and Bill Garvey, you know, were the ones that would be able to speak the best to that, you know. But, you know, of her four main collaborators, who were Jonathan Demme, Bill Garvey, Mark Barrett, who's the guitarist of the London band, and Danny Z. You know, when I met Q and made the film, the only one who was still alive was Danny Z,
Wow.
who she did sort of the house music with. But I know that they both wrote, they both produced, they both sang. You know, sometimes he wrote and she sang, sometimes she wrote and she sang. You know, it was sort of different for each song, but he did the right thing where he copywrote everything and kind of both of their names, which, you know, is not what Bill Garvey did. So,
Man.
yeah. Yeah.
Man, seriously, thank you for like letting us know all this. This is an honor to have you even on this platform, you know, like
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
I'm jazzed. But two things.
Yeah.
Your social media and also words of advice. Oh, Scumvita said this. Did Q and Danny remain friends throughout the years? Sorry.
No, because when she disappeared, he didn't know where she was either. Like, she really went off the grid. She was not in touch with any of her friends or collaborators. So, yeah. So, but they met up again when we were making the film. I tracked him down. He teaches Pilates now, so I tracked him down through a Pilates studio that he had worked at in the past, and they happily were able to. They met up again, you know, and we're back in touch. Yeah.
So cool. That is so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, my Instagram is at EVA ARIDJIS FUENTES, and Q's Instagram, run by her son James, is at Real Q Lazzarus. And words of advice. I mean, it would be, I think, some words that Q says to James in the film, which is, you got to know when to let things go and what battles to pick, and, not hold on to shit. Just know what's important and fight for that, and stuff that is not important, don't waste precious time and energy on it, because you only have one life is short. And yeah, so much of what happens to people in your life, a lot of it is obviously affected by other people and circumstances and luck and opportunity, but the most important thing is your own attitude towards things, and how you handle everything that the universe brings your way. So.
Create. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Man.
and don't lose sight of your dreams. Like you went back to her dream even decades later. It doesn't matter how old you are or whatever. Like, just yeah, hold on to your dreams.
Man. Two other things. Oh my gosh. Where is the movie being streamed again? And also, is Sacred Bones on Instagram or any other
Yeah.
links?
Sacred Bones is at Sacred Bones. yeah, Sacred Bones, you can, they have the website, you can buy their music through, you can get it on obviously iTunes, you can download it online, you can buy vinyl, you can buy CD of the soundtrack. And the movie, Goodbye Horses, Many Lives, Q Lazarus, is streaming on Criterion Channel. It'll be there for 3 years, and it's also available to rent or buy on Amazon and on Vimeo. Yeah.
Man.
In the US and Canada. Yeah.
Man. Well, Ava, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Man, I appreciate it. I feel thank you is not enough, but like as far as
Please.
like me to you, because I'm like more than honored to have you on here. Thanks a million, and I really appreciate it. And just shouts to you and James. And James, if you want to come through, let me know. I'll be down to interview you too.
Yeah, you should do it. Watch the film and then have James on.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch that film.
Part two.
That'll be rad.
I think Q deserves two episodes.
Yep. We want to make sure that we pay as much tribute to her as we can. Even like, I'm going to send you guys what I wrote. I wrote this in 2020, like, and just, I mean, whatever corrections that need to be made, like, you guys can do that. That's what this platform's for. And I want to thank you. And I want to thank the audience, all you cats out there. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys for coming out and rocking with me and Eva. And man, I'm overexcited. Sorry if I seem like too exuberant, but I just dig this. And I want to thank you guys, and peace and blessings to you. Besame abo woman feskadusadum like I mean. Black history of rock and roll, Black history of rock and roll, Black history of rock and roll. Y'all be safe out there. Peace.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.